Hey everybody, what do I always say? That I am not the brilliant mind behind formulating these amazing therapeutic diets that dissolve urinary stones and manage kidney disease and liver disease, all that kind of stuff. For 34 years, I was just the messenger. I was trained by these amazing people, and I would have to go into the clinic and share that information with vets and their teams. And I had the privilege of seeing the results of those diets. Well, today you are going to hear from one of those brilliant people. I am so excited. I always say that my bias, my passion for pet nutrition really is because of these people that trained me when I was a young man, way before Zoom and all that. They had to fly me to Topeka, and I would learn from Mark Morris Jr. and this veterinarian here and a few others. And I have Dr. Kathy Gross is going to be with us, and I did an interview with her today, and I'm really hoping that this was just the first of many. So I definitely want you guys to one, to listen and hear what she has to say, because you're hearing this from a PhD nutritionist, not an ingredientist. She laughed when I told her about my ingredientist word. But she goes through and talks about research. Everybody says, oh, the big three just, manipulate vets, and vets don't know anything about nutrition. So she touches on what research is like and all that. And then she talks about protein and some really interesting new information about excess protein. So that's something, we're battling that all the time on this channel. And also carbs. Okay, carbs. So I said, let's start with some of the biggies, protein and carbs, and that's what we do. And talk about fresh a little bit. And I just want you to hear the perspective, a lot like my perspective, but coming from the real nutritionist, not just the messenger. So again, I'm really excited that we did the interview. And what I'd like you to do is, if you have questions, specific questions, this first interview was just kind of an overview, and then we got into the protein and carbs and fresh food. But I'm sure you're going to have some specific questions. She agreed to come back, and we'll do another one of these. And it's just such a unique opportunity to have the real deal, and not just hearing from again, the guy in the middle, like I was. You're hearing right from the people that do the research. She's now an adjunct professor at Kansas State. She has been for years, but now she has more time to work there. She retired in 23, same year I did. And so anyway, let's just let me roll it. And again, I hope you enjoy it. And please list your questions so I can get her back here, and we can do another one and keep it going. All right. So again, welcome. If you're new, that this is the first time I've had a true credentialed nutritionist on the channel. And I'm very excited. So watch it, and we'll catch you at the end. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Pet Food Puzzle Guy. And today I am really excited. Most of you know I worked for Hills for over 3 decades, and I have with me Dr. Kathy Gross, and she and I go back a long way. I can't imagine the last time we talked, Kathy, since the other day, maybe decades. But anyway, I want you guys to hear a lot of the stuff I say, but I want you to hear it from somebody that really knows what they're talking about, not just me. And so I'm just going to let Kathy explain what she does and what she's done, and then we'll get into some of the questions that have been gnawing at me. Okay, so Kathy, it's all yours.
Thank you, Glenn. And it is really nice to catch up. It's been a long time, and we spent a lot of our career at the same place, and that's been really nice. I am a animal nutritionist by training. I have a PhD in animal nutrition, and I spent 32 years at Hills Pet Nutrition working in research and development, from formulating foods to evaluating ingredients to conducting feeding studies and clinical studies, and managing teams that were involved with innovation and product development and research and all of that. And I retired from Hills, and I haven't quit working though. I have been an adjunct professor at Kansas State University for many, many years. And since I retired, I have a lot more time to help at Kansas State. Kansas State has the only undergraduate bachelor's degree program in pet food science in the country. It also has a very long-standing master's and PhD program there. And Kansas State, the Olathe campus, is very well known for involvement in the regulatory side of pet nutrition and has recently joined with APCO and is working on evaluation of new ingredients to bring into the animal feed industry, including the pet food industry. So I get involved with giving guest lectures. I also do help students with their research projects and help the faculty in any way they need with conferences or whatever. And then I also do a little consulting, and so my passion is trying to help new things get into the pet food industry. So I help startup companies and with nutrition problems, ingredient issues, whatever they might have. And then the other passion I have is really supporting women in the pet food industry. So I'm very heavily involved in the Women in Pet Food Leadership group um, with the mentoring activities that we do there.
Wow. Okay. That's a lot that I wasn't even aware of. I just knew, yeah, she's from Hills. Hey, and I want to ask you just because time is so limited, I have so many things I want to ask you. We'll probably have to do another one of these if you don't mind. But the big thing that when I meet somebody with so many credentials and the experience you have, when I'm on my channel talking with folks, it's always, well, the nutrition research out there, it's just done and it's biased to support the big three, Hills, Purine, and Royal Canin. So if you're going to do a study and you're funding it, well, they're going to make sure your product comes out looking wonderful. So it's all marketing. There's no real science to it. And the vets just, suck it in and accept it. And it's just like blind faith. How would you describe the reality to that myth?
Right. So there is a lot of pet nutrition research that's out there, companion animal nutrition, and it's done all over the world. So some of it is done by pet food companies, but in order to get it published, you have a lot of hurdles to get research published. It goes through peer reviews, which involve uh, review by people that are not in, the pet food industry or connected with a company or anything. But there's a lot of research that's out there. And pet food companies actually use that research too to help them understand what's the latest science that's happening. How can I incorporate new knowledge into my products if they're looking at doing that? And so there's definitely a lot of science out there. When I was doing that kind of research, we were always doing literature searches and finding high quality research that's not associated with pet food companies that comes out of Europe. Some big universities over there do really good research. The faculty in Japan, Korea, even China does really good fundamental nutritional research that helps inform what we know about pet nutrition. And not only pet research, but there's a lot of research that's done in other species like people that is really helpful in understanding how it might work in pets. And so as a scientist, I look at all the research that's out there to help understand and formulate, what the knowledge base is and how can I apply that to the pets that I'm trying to feed.
Right. And it's to be fair to the practicing veterinarians. I mean, I've had a lot of veterinarians over 34 years. Some really weren't that interested in nutrition. I mean, they'd even tell me, well, when I diagnosed this disease, I just grabbed this diet. I don't know much about it, but I know enough that the people like you and the other specialists have formulated this food. So I always have to remind people when you say my vet isn't the nutritionist. No, she's not. Okay. But there are nutritionists and she's trusting them. And it is a long line
Yep.
of research. It's not just
Yeah,
marketing.
And that happens in every industry is you have the experts that help bring that knowledge. At Kansas State University, we call it extension, right? When we take knowledge and we bring it to someone so they can use it on a practical basis. And that's how it works for veterinarians. They can't be experts in surgery and medicine and nutrition and all at the same time. They have to rely on people that know more than they do to
Right.
read that information, synthesize it, and bring it to them in a practical way. And that's exactly how they get their information.
And the other thing that I again, just because I've been in the game so long, I look at names of some nutritionists that I know, a few from Hills, a few from other articles I've read, and from my knowledge base, I'm like, wow, they know what they're talking about. They're legit. Not only do they have credentials, but what they're saying, I've heard that from all the other experts. That makes sense. But I'll find they get associated with a pet food company or a pet food that when I look at the nutrient composition or the marketing or whatever, it's like, wow, that doesn't sound like them. I wouldn't have expected that nutritionist would be associated with that company. How does that, I realize, especially the larger the company you get, you've got your marketing people, you've got the money people that are figuring out how do we stay in business, and then you have the nutritionists saying, okay, with all my research, everything, here's the perfect diet. Is that perfect diet always the final product after the money people and everybody get involved?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And you and I came from Hills, and so we know that Hills primary objective was always to provide the best nutrition for the pet. It may not have been trendy. It may not have fit with, certain beliefs that people had, but the goal was this was for the pet, whether it was a pet that was sick that could benefit from nutrition or a healthy pet that could benefit from, the knowledge base that we had. You think about other companies, pet nutrition isn't always their primary reason for being. That may not have been the reason that that company went into business. So some companies go into business because they have a belief in certain things like we only want human grade ingredients. That's their primary purpose for being in business, to put foods with human grade ingredients or make it in a certain form, for example, or they play to, we believe dogs are wolves and therefore our foods are formulated like that. Or so you have to look at those companies and say, what's their primary reason for being? And that's always going to be their top priority. Then other things fall below that. And oftentimes nutrition and optimal nutrition falls below that because they can't really do both,
Hmm.
right? So that's where, you have to look at why that company is in business and is, their goal is to deliver, say, a fresh food that has good enough nutrition, as opposed to a company where optimal nutrition is really the goal. And there's a lot of marketing that happens there. So people try and say, oh, we can do it all. But in reality, it's very difficult, especially with some of the primary objectives that certain companies have to get to that optimal nutrition.
And you mentioned form, a form of food. And I've said this before, and I'm sure you'll agree. There's like what? There's canned, there's kibble, there's fresh, there's raw. And people will decide, okay, like you said, our focus is this form. And the form doesn't matter. It's either an excellent diet or a poorly formulated diet, but the form, you could choose any form you want, right?
Right. And I've said this to everybody that, will listen to me. As a nutritionist, I can formulate a really good food in any form possible. I also can formulate really terrible foods in every form possible. And that goes to say with ingredient selection too. You can have the best looking ingredient label with terrible nutrition. You can also have a really good ingredient label with really good nutrition. So it's kind of hard to say one form is better than another form. They're different, guaranteed they're different, but they can all deliver good nutrition if that's the purpose of that product. And you mentioned, the fresh out there, and it's the newest thing. People were excited about it. They think it's, better for some reason. I've looked at a lot of those products that are out there, and as a nutritionist, I don't think that all of them have nutrition as their highest priority. They're talking about, we want to deliver this form that looks pretty. It's got all these things that people can see in it. But I see that some of those fresh forms are extraordinarily high in fat. They're very high in calories. And then when you think about, okay, if they're high in fat and calories, that means I don't need to feed as much to my dog. But that also means when I feed less, am I feeding less of essential trace minerals, essential vitamins, and things like that? And I don't know if those products are formulated kind of to deal with that sort of nutritional balance,
Right.
because it's very hard to do that. It's tricky to
Right.
formulate those products appropriately.
Yeah. I say that all the time. On my channel, we talk at a certain level of nutrition, and it's probably more marketing than it is real nutrition, like what you deal with. And I've often said that. I remember way back when there was no Zoom or internet, and they'd fly me to Topeka, and I'd be in the lunchroom with you nutritionists would be sitting around talking, and some of the stuff you guys would be talking about was fascinating, but it was like it's nothing compared to the pet food conversation that pet parents are having. It's a whole very complicated world. So
Yeah.
speaking of that, the two things I get hit with all the time on my channel and I address the most is protein and carbs. The protein, there's no such thing as excessive protein. High protein's wonderful. Meat is magic. Just as long as there's meat, you're great. And then, of course, carbs are just a cheap filler that causes diabetes and obesity and all that. So if you kind of go with the protein first and just address on our level here, but what are some of the things, what's new, what's the same?
Yeah, so with protein, so protein is not actually what pets need. Actually, pets need amino acids, which are the building blocks that make up protein, right? But we talk about protein, but what they really need is the right balance of essential amino acids that are digestible and bioavailable to meet their body's needs. So for building cells, for maintaining muscles, for providing energy in the case of cats, and that kind of thing. So the amount of protein is based on what a pet needs. Unfortunately, protein can't be stored. Otherwise, we would have bulked up pets because they sit on the couch and they eat a lot of protein. They would just be muscle bound, right? That doesn't happen. That doesn't happen for people. That doesn't happen for pets. Excesses of protein go two different ways. One way is they get absorbed, not used by the body. The body says, okay, we don't need these excesses of amino acids. And so they break them down into their components and excrete the negative things, the nitrogen parts. And then guess what? The leftover carbohydrate parts of amino acids get turned into fat. So if you eat excesses of a protein than the body needs, it actually gets turned into fat. The other way excess protein can go is it can bypass digestion. So even a product that has, if it has high levels of protein, but and is 90% digestible, 10% of that protein is going to bypass digestion. It's going to go to the lower part of the digestive tract. And then the bacteria that live down there are going to have a big party because they've just been fed protein and they love protein. But when bacteria get a hold of protein, they excrete waste products that are not very healthy in most cases. They create products that have names like cadaverine and putrescine. And those kind of amines that are the waste products of bacterial protein metabolism are actually detrimental to the cells in the digestive tract. In some cases, they can be absorbed into the pet's body, and then they're negative things that impact the health of other organs. So my goal is always balance. Yes, you need a certain amount of protein, and different ages of pets, different conditions that pets are in, they require more or less protein. But for the most part, the minimum level of protein is actually much lower than even the AFCO minimum requirement. Um, Adult healthy dogs only need about 10% protein if it's of high quality to give them the essential amino acids. AFCO says you need 18, so we're already well above.
Wow. Okay.
Many,
I
many,
was not aware of that. Wow.
yeah,
Okay.
many foods are
Oh,
three,
way.
four, five times the minimal requirement. Even at an AFCO minimum level, we have more than enough protein for an adult dog.
Yeah, I think the small animal clinical nutrition, it was 15% to 30% on a dry matter basis for an adult they had in there. And
Mm-hmm.
again, like you said, you definitely can get away with less. And I've seen dogs on senior and KD for
Oh yeah,
years. But yeah, this push that high protein, and there's a guy that's on all the time. He's making videos all the time. My subscribers know because I don't mention him anymore for copyright reasons, but oh my goodness, the first thing he says, there is no such thing as excess protein. There's just nothing wrong with excess protein. And I'm like, okay, you can stop listening to him right there. That's one thing. I'm no
yeah,
expert, but I tell my subscribers, there's lots of things I don't know, but when I hear something from somebody and one, they don't have any credentials, that's always, something to think about. But they say something so outlandish that I know is totally wrong. Why would I then believe something else that I'm not aware of that they say? The credibility is important,
yeah,
But,
yeah.
so speaking of the microbiome, before I retired, Hills came out with the GI biome diet that was just amazing. So in my head, I'm really trained that why the natural approach is feed the prebiotics that's going to naturally nurture the dog's natural microbiome rather than introducing a probiotic, the actual bacteria. So I really kind of decided, yeah, I don't think I thought probiotics was great, but it does make sense. Let's just try to normalize and restore the natural bacteria rather than introducing something that can even cause more problems. That's pretty much correct.
Yeah, so there's probiotics, which, as you said, are the live bacteria, and it's usually one species or two. In most cases, it isn't a species of bacteria that came from a dog or a cat. It may have been isolated from another species. So, a probiotic in certain conditions and being a certain species, and even down to the subspecies is important, can actually help to balance a little bit of the natural bacteria that are there. So when you feed a probiotic, it produces end products, and some of those end products actually are beneficial to the natural bacteria that are living in the gut. So it can have a benefit. Um, but as you said, it's prebiotics, which are the food for the desirable bacteria. That's really a great approach. You're feeding a pet every day. It's easy to have those prebiotics that then nurture those beneficial bacteria, and you kind of keep that gut in balance that way. One of the newest things that's out there is what's called postbiotics. And postbiotics include the bacteria themselves, but also some of the media that those bacteria were grown in. And most of the time, the bacteria are dead. So the cells have broken open, and there's some of that good stuff inside of those bacteria. And we're just starting to understand the benefit that that type of an ingredient or supplement could have on pet health. But you'll start to see those out there in foods and supplements and even some treats for pets now. But again, there's still a lot of research that needs to be done on what applications, what health conditions are those really beneficial.
Yeah, I had just left Hills when they reformulated KD or renal diet with all that new research with the gut,
Mhm.
the connection of the gut to the kidneys, and so I missed out on that. But yeah, that's what's going on. So and speaking of prebiotics and fiber, carbs. I mean, oh my goodness, carbs are from the devil. Carbs cause cancer, they cause diabetes, they cause obesity. Of course, you just explained how excess protein can also cause obesity. I've heard the webinars from other nutritionists, veterinary nutritionists saying, hey, there's no evidence that high carbs it puts your cat at risk of
Right.
diabetes or obesity, all that. Well, you know, I'm sure you hear it all the time. What's your answer to that?
Yeah, so carbs are an energy source, and most of the time when we say carbs, we're thinking about the starchy carbohydrates, and they're an energy source. And every pet needs energy, and so you can get energy from carbohydrates, from fats, and even from excesses of proteins after they're broken down. And so, what I, as a nutritionist, look at is let's have some balance here. Carbohydrates are not inherently bad and actually, the subset of carbohydrates, the fiber side of things, we're learning more and more that those are incredibly important for the health of the gut as well as the health of the overall pet. And you mentioned earlier about kidney health, and one of the things that I find really fascinating now is we're starting to understand this crosstalk that happens between the gut bacteria and the compounds they're producing, and then the body organs and the metabolites that they produce. And, we don't understand their language quite yet. We don't know exactly what they're saying to each other, but these gut bacteria, they produce compounds, they get absorbed, and they go to organs like the kidneys. They go to the heart, they go to the liver, they go to the brain, even. And then those cells in those organs start producing compounds and they make their way back to the gut. So it's like a little telephone line that happens. We don't understand everything they're saying, but what we know is sometimes when the gut microbiome makes certain chemicals, those make their way to organs, they change what those organs do. And they can change them in a positive way or they can change them in a negative way. And so, and then the organs, because they're changing, they send other messages. So it's kind of a complicated thing. But what we know is maintaining a healthy balance of gut bacteria, and that healthy balance involves carbohydrates. Gut bacteria, when they metabolize either prebiotic fibers or starches, they produce compounds that are considered more healthy. And unlike when those bacteria metabolize proteins, they produce things that are not so healthy. So carbohydrates can be helpful for an energy source, but they also help balance the microbiome.
And there's what fatty acids. I mean, there's all kinds of good stuff. And
Yeah,
I like I said, it's probably the two things that people will, if they'll put in a comment, oh, you're supporting Hills or you like Hills, they use carbs or their protein is too low or they're using plant protein or things like that that just they're just hearing it from all the social media out there.
sure.
How about and again, another one I hear all the time, excuse me, is like you said, fresh is the big thing now. And I really do believe that the marketers out there, the pet food marketers, I mean, you and I have lived through natural. Remember when natural came out and holistic? Of course, holistic had absolutely no meaning, but it was effective. And then, we have the wolf, and now we're into this anti-kibble. I remember back in the 90s, we were at a Hills meeting and we all were sitting around. And he said, boy, you could be rich if you could figure out what's the next gimmick that's going to come for the pet food industry. If you could be ahead of that, you could really be wealthy. Whoever would have thought the anti-kibble thing would come? But I think to me that the pet food marketers realize two things. If we're going to push fresh and raw and all this other stuff, we're going to try to be different. We have to two things. We have to make kibble look bad because most people are feeding kibble. And again, like you
Yeah,
said, that's a form. There are excellent kibbles out there, that are managing kidney disease and all kinds of wonderful things, dissolving urinary stones. There's also kibble that's pretty much crap, okay? But the form is the same.
right.
Um, but they're coming out and saying not only is kibble bad, and the question I have for you is, well, I hear it all the time, and I'm sure you do. It gets cooked at such high temperatures that all the nutrients are destroyed, and that's why they have to then add in synthetics to make up the difference. So that's my question. But I do believe, tell me if I'm just too paranoid in my old age, but that the other pillar is they have to destroy the recommendation of the veterinarian because
Mm,
veterinarians are saying Hills is fine, Purina's fine, Royal Canin's fine. And yes, God forbid your dog or cat has this condition. Here's the therapeutic diet I want you to use. They have to destroy that in order to be able to sell their product. Because if they leave that, it's just too hard. We have fresh and it's better or whatever. But maybe it's just my opinion, but I see it all the time. Don't believe your vet. They don't know what they're talking about. They're not nutritionists. And kibble's bad for all these reasons because it's so high in carbs and the heat just destroys all the nutrients.
yeah, so I've heard those same type of things over the years too. You know, the I agree. Whenever you're marketing something new, you always want to make something a villain, and so it's the good versus the evil that happens. So they pick kibble. It's still the largest selling type of pet food that's out there. And there's a lot of reasons for that. It provides what pets need, right? So, and when it's formulated appropriately, then it can provide complete and balanced nutrition. And I'll tell you that complete and balanced nutrition is difficult to achieve without making sure that you have all of the nutrients. If you look at the AFCO nutrient list, it's 42 to 45 nutrients that AFCO has decided are essential nutrients to be provided in complete and balanced pet foods. It's very difficult to get all of those levels, no matter what form you're making. So, whether it's kibbled or baked, or whether you're making a fresh food, you're making a canned food, a pouched food, to get that complete and balanced nutrition, you really need to look at how you can fill in the gaps from the ingredients you're providing. And keep in mind that pet foods are very much like what infant formulas are. They are the sole source of nutrition. So
Yeah.
you sure as heck don't want to be missing a nutrient, right? Because if you're feeding that food, day after day, week after week, you want to make sure it has what that pet needs. Humans, we don't eat a single food that provides everything we need. We pick and choose. And in reality, we're not very good at that,
No. I have I have
So
eight I have eight granddaughters, and one is special needs, nonverbal, and she has to eat through a G tube. And she has these pouches. And this is, the difference between, well, processed is bad and fresh is good. Well, I can pretty much guarantee, and no fault of my sons or daughter-in-laws, whatever, but I'm sure that Avi getting that special pouch or everything she needs every day is a whole lot more balanced diet than what my other seven grandkids are getting day in, day out. It's just the reality.
it is the
So
reality. Yeah, I still remember, I had, when my youngest daughter was a 2-year-old, the only thing she wanted to eat was chicken nuggets.
That's
And
right.
so I was like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. And
Or
I'm a
mac and
terrible
cheese,
mother. Yeah.
Kraft mac and cheese, just nothing
Oh
but, you
yes,
know.
it's awful. And so, yeah, feeding our pets, it's a difficult decision because there is so much marketing involved with pet nutrition. The bottom line is that any form can be healthy, any form can be not so healthy. And a lot of it depends upon what the philosophy of the company is, their history, their knowledge base. Um, and then what does the individual pet need? Not every pet is the same. They
Right,
have different activity levels. They come with different genetics. They come with different environmental situations. And so one pet food isn't always the best for every dog. And that's why you see a lot of companies like Hills that we work with. We had huge number of products for adult dogs and adult cats because one, you know, feed every cat, feed every adult dog
right,
didn't work because there are differing needs even within adult animals. And so that's what you kind of have to keep in mind. And sometimes it's a little trial and error, but it's also trying to, peel back some of the marketing fluff and really trying to understand, is this company focused on nutrition
right,
or is nutrition a second priority for
right.
them
And that
or
was the
third
whole reason I
priority?
started my channel was the puzzle part was putting all the marketing together as a puzzle to get a clear picture. Zoom is going
Yeah.
to cut us off any
Okay.
time now. So I can't believe it's been 40 minutes already. That's crazy. But I want to end it there because I think what you just said, it doesn't matter the form. You can choose your form, but you have to trust that that form has the optimal nutrient levels. And I always tell my subscribers, show me the nutrients. That's what I want to look at. Don't be an ingredientist and just look at that ingredient panel. But we're going to have to do
Right.
this again because I got a ton more questions. I so appreciate you giving me the time. And maybe folks can put questions in this
Yep.
one, and then we'll have those for the next time we get together. Sound good?
That sounds fantastic,
All
Glenn. I
right.
appreciate it.
Dr. Gross, Kathy, thank you so much. I'm so glad we've reconnected, and this is going to be great. So
Thank you.
thanks again. You take care. Okay, so again, I'm sure you're going to have some questions, so put them in the comments, and we'll get Kathy back. And again, a special thanks to Kathy for with all the busyness she has going on to come on my little channel and share the information. I did tell her what an awesome community we had of pet parents, so she was really happy to come on, and she was great. So thanks for listening. Hope you're enjoying autumn out there. It's getting even a little chillier. Thanksgiving's coming, so I hope you're enjoying the new holiday season that's upon us. I already started decorating outside because we're going to be traveling for Thanksgiving, so I got to get it all done before then. So looks still pretty much like pre-Christmas out in front of my house. But hope you're all doing well. Remember, treat every day like it's precious because every day really is, right? You all take care.